Thank you to everyone for joining me today. Last week, I outlined the standards we will be following as we move toward reopening Pennsylvania. On Monday, I discussed a rollout date for the start of a series of reopenings on May 8th. Today, I'm providing more information on the reopening process, including the criteria we will use and the phases that will come next. As I've said before, we will not just be flipping a switch and going from closed to open. And ultimately, the virus is going to set the timeline, not us. There is no single tool that we will use to determine reopenings. Rather, we will look at several pieces to ensure that our case count is under control and that we have the local support to manage the cases and outbreaks. First, we will use metrics set by the Department of Health. The initial benchmark we're setting is for the population to have an average of less than 50 cases per 100,000 individuals over the course of 14 days in order to return to work. But we're also going to need to look at areas like testing rates, the ability to investigate cases, contact tracing capabilities, and proximity to high-risk settings. We're also partnering with Carnegie Mellon University as they develop a modeling tool that will incorporate a number of public health and economic factors. We'll use the health criteria and the CMU modeling tool to determine phases. There are going to be 3 phases: red, yellow, and green. We're currently, obviously, in the red phase statewide with only life-sustaining businesses operating and Pennsylvanians staying at home except to fulfill critical needs. As regions hit benchmarks that show that they're ready, they'll move to the yellow phase. Specifically, we're monitoring the north central and northwest parts of Pennsylvania based on the criteria and the model with the goal of moving them to the yellow phase on May 8th. This yellow phase will lift some restrictions, including parts of the business closure order. The phase will continue to limit on things like high-risk activities such as keeping school buildings closed, restricting restaurants to curbside pickup or delivery only, allowing retail to reopen with protections in place for workers and customers, and preventing large social gatherings. And businesses will need to continue to prioritize telework or abide by worker safety guidelines if telework isn't possible. Finally, a region will move to the green phase, which will include lifting the remaining parts of the stay-at-home orders, but still require Pennsylvanians to adhere to CDC and Department of Health guidelines. An example would be to still require universal masking if the CDC and the Department of Health are recommending it when a region reaches this green phase. These steps will be in combination with a regional approach. If Southeast Pennsylvania continues to be a concern, reopening will be slower there than in places where the case counts have been low. When it comes to business sectors, we have already begun the process of reopening. As many of you know, the wine and spirit stores have curbside pickup. Online auto sales began on Monday, and all construction will resume on May 1st, next Friday. I want to emphasize that Pennsylvanians should take the guidance given to their communities and their businesses seriously. The more a community commits to staying home and succeeds at suppressing the case count, the sooner and faster restrictions can be eased. We will be keeping a constant watch on our COVID-19 case figures, and I will caution that we may announce a target date that will have to be pushed back due to new cases. Or we might reopen some areas or some businesses only to have them close again if the virus begins to resurge. I understand that not having definite dates for each of these pieces to fall into place is difficult, but we will continue to provide updates as regions move from phase to phase. By using this measured, step-by-step rollout of reopenings, we can continue to protect the lives of Pennsylvanians, especially our most vulnerable. But it will take continued help and support from everyone. You know, on Friday, we are going to reach the 7-week mark since the first COVID-19 case was confirmed in Pennsylvania. At that time, we were watching this virus decimate communities in other countries. We had already been preparing for the coronavirus's arrival for several weeks when we received that first positive test. Then we were unsure of how fast this virus would sweep across the Commonwealth, or if we could get our hands on the necessary medical supplies quicker than people got sick. We began with the least invasive containment efforts, contact tracing, quarantining individuals who were exposed to a known case, and asking people to self-isolate if they had symptoms. As the case count grew, so did our efforts. We rolled out closures with high population activities like schools. We rolled out business closures and stay-at-home orders in counties where the virus was rapidly spreading. Finally, we issued statewide closures and stay-at-home orders. These incremental steps bought us time to slow the virus's speed and ultimately led us to flatten the curve. Many people are still getting sick from COVID-19, but the current pace allows every sick patient to receive the medical treatment they need. And while many families are grieving loved ones lost to the virus, we have not seen the devastation that other places have seen. You all have done so much to step up and avert what could have become a much, much worse tragedy. I know that you're becoming weary. Some of you have been under stay-at-home orders for 6 weeks. And that's 6 weeks you haven't been able to visit your family, go to the gym, or browse in a store. Making this worse is the uncertainty of the future. We don't know when we're getting back to work, making it difficult to create personal financial plans. We don't know when our kids are going to be able to resume activities like sports or school. We don't even know if we should postpone that June wedding or cancel those summer vacation plans. And that's hard, because when you go through a rough patch, having something to look forward to really helps. So right now, I'm attempting to provide as much certainty as I can, even though the virus ultimately controls the calendar for each and every one of us. As I said earlier, the more buy-in we get, the quicker we can suppress the virus and start to reopen. So let's continue to stay at home for now when we can. Let's work together and make the final push to get our case rate down. And let's get this pandemic under control so we can put plans on our schedules and get back to doing the things we love. I know that Pennsylvanians are strong, and I have faith that all of you will continue to do your part.